Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of September and the new supermoon, third new supermoon in a row that we have in Libra on the 28th. In terms of important astrological events in this second half of September, first of all, on the 18th of the month, we have Saturn moving direct at 14 degrees of Capricorn. Now, Saturn has been moving retrograde since April this year, very long time, many months of retrogradation. And see where 13 to 14 degrees of Capricorn falls in your chart, because that area of life you may have felt things were a little stuck or blocked, or you had to deal with a lot of bureaucracy perhaps in that area, or you were putting a lot of effort and work into that house area. If you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of house areas, you can download a free birth chart from my website, and you can get these tutorial videos from my store, and they will help you understand the structure of your own unique birth chart and what this means for you. It's so much more meaningful for you, and you can use those videos for every update I ever do. So Saturn has been moving retrograde, but on the 18th, as I say, it starts to move direct and it starts to gather momentum. So whichever house it's falling in for you, you will now start to see the results of those efforts. You may get rewards from those efforts, particularly if you've worked hard. But it's moving direct, increasing its momentum down to that exact conjunction, 12th of January 2020, which all astrologers have been talking about, the exact conjunction between Saturn and Pluto. Jupiter also went direct in August, so that's gathering momentum as well. And indeed, Pluto, which has been moving retrograde for many months as well, will be moving direct on the 3rd of October. So we're seeing increased momentum, and that may mean there's increased busyness in your life, increased forward motion in the areas where these planets are falling. They're all kind of bunched up. Jupiter between sort of mid degrees of Sagittarius, and Saturn Pluto between about 13, 14 and 20 of Capricorn. So that area may really start to move forwards for you. So that's why it's so helpful to know which area it falls in. So in addition to that, on the 23rd of the month, we have the autumn equinox. Now, solstices and equinoxes are very important kind of spiritual power days, because the veil between us and the higher worlds falls. It's more permeable. The subtle energies can flow into us more easily. So these are terrific days to meditate, to focus, to be in nature, and just to allow any insights or downloads to happen for you, because they're very, very powerful days. That's the 23rd. Equally, the autumn equinox, when we have solstices and equinoxes, it's like striking a tuning fork for the tone of the next few months. So this autumn equinox will really define the tone of what we're going to experience over these coming 3 months, moving into January 2020. We're on a kind of fast rundown now to 2020. Now, there's a cardinal grand cross happening at this autumn equinox. We've got the Sun and Venus in Libra being directly opposed by Chiron in Aries, and we've got the Moon conjunct the North Node being directly opposed by Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. Now let's kind of break that down a little to see what it means, because Venus and the Sun in Libra, it's very much about self-worth, actually. Venus in Libra, it's about love, it's about self-worth, it's about fairness, it's about balance, about justice in society. And that's being opposed by Chiron in Aries. And Chiron in Aries, that's very much, do I have a right to exist? Do I have a right in this society? So this is very much about the inequality, I feel, that is happening in the world, the very clear inequality. Now, there's a potential for healing that. Always with Chiron, there's a potential for healing. And sort of similar to that, there's this other opposition that's happening in this grand cross of the Moon and the North Node. North Node is where we're headed, our collective future destiny, if we want to evolve as a race. And that is putting more emphasis on compassion, on nurturing, on caring for the vulnerable, on issues around motherhood and children, the vulnerability of children. And yet that's being opposed by Saturn-Pluto in Capricorn, which tends to be the heavy hand of government. The rules, the regulations, not much room for compassion in there. It's just the law will dictate what happens to those more vulnerable people. So it's really similar theme coming out from those two oppositions forming the Cardinal Grand Cross. So very much about the vulnerable and the underdogs, if you like, the people who don't feel that they have enough of a say in society. It isn't equal enough. So I think that's a very, very big theme going into 2020. So that's the autumn equinox. In addition, something to be aware of at the round about the autumn equinox from the 21st to the 23rd is that transiting Mars is squaring the sun of the US president and the sun of the Chinese president, because they were born just one day apart. So whenever we have hard aspects from Mars like this, it can make people more assertive. So just watch what unfolds between those two countries, because the autumn equinox is a very important part of the setup for what is going to unfold in January 2020 at that exact Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 12th. So then we have our very important new supermoon happening on the 28th of the month. It's happening at 11:26 a.m. Pacific, and it's happening at 7:26 p.m. UK time. It's happening at 5 degrees and 20 minutes of Libra. Now again, see where this falls in your chart. These supermoons are really powerful new beginnings. See where it falls, because these are great opportunities to set a new intention for what you want to create at this time. Yes, it's very concerned about relationship, and I'm going to come on to that and explain the detail of it, but it's also, your new intention is conditioned by the house where it falls. Is it falling in your 11th house? You want to develop more friendships and social networks, perhaps. Is it falling in your 10th? You want a new dimension to your work, or even a new job. So you're planting a seed at this time, and what setting intentions do is focus the thinking. So you're much more likely to manifest it as the months go by. You're planting a new seed. So at this new supermoon, and remember, supermoons mean that the moon is very close in its orbit to the Earth. So the moon is going to have a stronger pull on the tectonic plates and also on our psyches. That's why it's such a powerful new beginning for us. So at this new supermoon, we have the sun, and firstly, just before I get into that, we have a shift from mutable into cardinal energy, because over the last month or so, we've had a lot of focus on planets in mutable signs. They are chameleon-like, they're flexible, they're adaptable, they can change and go with the winds, and they're very creative. Sometimes that can mean things get a bit chaotic because there's so much potential for change, but they are also excellent for creativity. But that kind of malleability is changing now as the planets tend to move into cardinal signs. For instance, at this new supermoon, we have 6 planets in cardinal signs. We have Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, and we have the Sun, Moon, Mercury and Venus in Libra. So that cardinal energy is initiatory, it's dynamic, it has forward propulsion and momentum, and together with the outer planets such as Jupiter and Saturn moving direct, and very soon Pluto to move direct on the 3rd of October, we have this increasing sense of busyness, perhaps a lot of things happening in the outer world and in our lives too. Now, Libra, the sign of Libra, tends to be about relationship. At this new supermoon, we have the Sun and the Moon being opposed by Chiron. So, as I say, that brings up these issues around relationship. Have you been wounded in a relationship? Have you been hurt in some way? Chiron always carries the potential for healing within that relationship. And as I've mentioned, it's also about equality in society too. What's fair, what's just, what's right. Two signs that are connected to the law are Libra and Sagittarius. And because Jupiter is moving quickly now through Sagittarius, and we have this emphasis of planets in Libra, that can bring up legal issues which maybe can start to progress. But big legal issues which are on the world stage perhaps as well can start to move forwards. But it is very linked to relationship. We have some interesting aspects concerning relationship, because we've got Venus, the ruler of Libra, conjunct Mercury in Libra. Now that's very idealistic about relationship, wanting the perfect relationship. However, we have Saturn square to Venus, and that tends to make us much more pragmatic about relationships. We may be sort of assessing our romantic relationships less romantically, in fact, and more realistically. Does this actually work for me? Now, in a strong relationship, that will consolidate it. In a weaker relationship, it will test it. In addition to that, we have Pluto square to Venus as well, and Mercury at this time. This brings in a lot of emotional intensity around relationship. It may make us think very deeply, square between Mercury and Pluto, think very deeply about relationship. Does it feel very intense? Does it feel jealous? Does it feel possessive? Does it feel there's a strong degree of control or manipulation coming in, which you may be wanting to resist in some way? Because the other aspect we have here, it's the only aspect, in fact, to Uranus, is a quincunx from Uranus to the Sun and Moon. And that tends to make us want to suddenly, impulsively break away. We want freedom. We want independence. We're done with all this complexity and intensity and control. We just want to be free. Be aware that that too will pass. You know, your mood, your feelings can change as we move beyond this new supermoon. But that potentially will be the clash if you're in a relationship which you don't feel is completely settled and perfect. So it's also, Uranus quincunx the Sun and Moon also gives us an opportunity to, at this new beginning, put out something to the world that is ingenious, original, highly individual as well. So see, if we know where 5 degrees 20 of Libra falls in your chart, that will give you an idea of the area of life where you can put out something highly ingenious and original. Uranus is also the planet of awakening. And it's very interesting here with Chiron opposing the Sun and Moon and Uranus quincunx to the Sun and Moon. Both Chiron and Uranus have this urge to move us upwards in our spiritual development. Uranus is very connected to the superconscious, fourth dimension. Chiron always has this urge to move us upwards in our spiritual perspective. So the situation may be that you become aware that you're on a different frequency to your partner. It was fine before, when you went into it, you're both on the same frequency, and now it feels at odds, it feels different. And that may be another element to take into consideration when you're thinking about relationship. But also, as I say, it's very much about fairness and justice in society. I think that will be a super big theme over the coming months, because society is so incredibly unequal, and that's being highlighted by this strong conjunction between Saturn and Pluto, which is rules and regulations, top down. This is how it is. Doesn't matter about how you feel. I think the other very important part of this new supermoon in Libra is this is about our relationship with ourselves, which is in fact the most important thing. Because if we can accept who we are and we have self-love for who we are, not in any egotistical way, simply by knowing who we are, having a strong sense of centre and knowing what we can offer to the world, then we tend to automatically have stronger boundaries. People don't mess with us. There's a sense of respect. Whereas if we don't have that strong sense of self-worth and centre, people can push us around. We have more difficult relationships which are unequal. because we tend to draw towards us the relationships that highlight our issues or that mirror the problems that are internal for us. They're simply reflecting where we're at internally. So the more you can develop your own sense of centre, your own sense of acceptance, your own sense of self-love, the more all relationships of any kind will work well, because you're coming from this strong sense of centre without having a lot of baggage and problem and low self-worth with it. So I'm feeling really incredibly strongly that is one of the most important elements of a new beginning for us in that respect as well. One of the final very important astrological developments in the second half of September is on the day of the new supermoon. Saturn, which has been conjunct the South Node all of September, becomes exact on the South Node. And from that point on, they separate because the nodal axis is always moving retrograde and Saturn is now moving direct. So they separate. So this is a kind of peak, if you like, around issues of getting what you've earned. Saturn is always about getting what you've earned in terms of the effort you've put in, the amount of work you've done, how you've handled responsibility in the world. It's a very direct relationship of reward to that effort and responsibility that you've behaved with, as it were. Can feel very karmic. It's also very much about how we've used our power as well. Have we used it in a very overbearing, overlording and dominant way, or have we just given it away? Because South Node in Capricorn is very much about the use of power in the past. That applies to countries too. I think it's fascinating at the moment at this quagmire of Brexit that transiting Saturn is square the nodal axis of the UK chart. January the 1st, 1801, 0 hours, London. It's square that nodal axis. So for the country, it is very much about how have you used your power, Britain, in the past. It's very interesting that we're going to be seeing that transiting nodal axis hitting the midheaven IC, the vertical axis of that UK chart in late October and November, when we are still legally due to exit the EU. So there's a lot going on. And so that really is a peak, Saturn conjunct that South Node. Watch what's happening in your life, watch what's happening middle of Capricorn, as I said earlier, about getting what you've earned and a sense of karma in those rewards in that particular area of life where it's falling. The other thing I just really want to echo, and I'm so aware of in the UK of what's happening to us right now, we're getting a lot of repeats actually, or several repeats of very important aspects that happened during an earlier constitutional crisis when King Charles I was beheaded, and for the first time in recorded history for the UK, England became a republic rather than a monarchy for a period of time. And that was a major constitutional crisis, and we're into a repeat of some of that. So I go into much, much more detail about this in my monthly newsletters, how we've been anticipating this for quite some time. Solar arc Pluto on the ascendant of the UK, very much about constitutional crisis. And really what I want to say in the UK isn't the only country that's having difficulties by a long way. Pluto grinding inexorably through Capricorn is all about the deconstruction of power systems. Power systems, governmental systems, the patriarchy, the way things have been structured in society. We should expect chaos, dysfunction, collapse, big power grabs to hang on to power for as long as they can. We should expect this, and therefore not to get distressed about it, to observe it as a witness. That's one of the great benefits of astrology, to be able to step back and think, okay, that's transiting Saturn moving through Capricorn. We can expect that. So with the deconstruction of the old order, just let it pass, just let it fall away, because I think over generations, in recent times, we have been defined by things we felt to be permanent and trusted. Governments, social structures, just many institutions which we felt would be there forever. This is part of the message also of Uranus moving through Taurus, because Uranus creates earthquakes in Taurus, sometimes literal. Taurus is fixed earth, but also in what we felt was going to be permanent or certainly long term. So just let all that fall away. Don't be defined by that. Define yourself. Who do you want to be? Step into the new you that you want to be in every sense. What do you want to do? How do you want to beam out your light to the world? Start to create that in a very energetic quantum way. I think part of this big paradigm shift is us realizing how much power we actually have to do that. And I write about this in my last book, How to Co-Create, using the secret language of the universe, but it's something that's available to every single one of us, so we don't have to feel like a victim when very big things are happening in society. So hope that's been clear and helpful for you. So if you'd like more information about my books, my monthly newsletter, my tutorial videos, and by the way, I've just filmed some recent new tutorial videos. We'll be putting out a separate video on those very soon. You can just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And in the meantime, have a wonderful, powerful new beginning at this new supermoon at 5 degrees of Libra on the 28th of September. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.